Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about Uncia. So this is a Latin word for 1/12 of something. And this Uncia word propagates into a few English words we have now. There's the inch, which is obviously 1/12 of a foot. And then we have, the funny one is the ounce. Now the ounce is, there's 16 ounces in a US pound, and there's 8 ounces in a cup. A fluid ounce, it's called, is 1/8 of a cup. But the ounce does originate from the word uncia. So what it is the Troy pound or the Roman pound had 12 ounces in it. So the US one is 16. The Troy one, the Roman one back in the day, was 12 ounces, 12 of their ounces. We can't say these are 1-to-1 measurements. You can't say 12 Roman ounces are 12 US ounces, or that a Roman pound is a US pound. So I don't know anything about that. But the word itself, this is where the word ounce is coming from. Now, what I thought of when I was looking into this is, why would they divide by 12? Why not by 10? Because we have 10 fingers. That's kind of the origin of why we divide by 10 today. We have the decimal system, the deca. Everything is kind of deca. We have, tens and hundreds and thousands and etc. And the whole metric system is based on multiples of 10. Why wouldn't they do that as well? Because our fingers and toes. And so what they did is they counted on their hands by each finger bone. So if you count each finger bone, you have 12 of them. So you'd start at your first closest finger bone, and then you count 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and etc. up to 12. And so you could actually count to 12 on each hand with, something else in the other hand. So in that case, it actually makes a lot of sense, and you could probably use this in other ways I haven't thought of yet, but that is kind of another natural occurrence of 12. So they had in their hands still the ability to count to 12, so they weren't giving up that versatility that we find with being able to count to 10 with our fingers or count to 5. They had that easily enough at hand. But the thing is, things being divided into 12 are found in other places in our kind of culture. We've got our calendar year, obviously. We've got our clock. So the calendar year was originally 10 months. They had March through December. And then they added January and February. But the reason they added January and February is because the two reasons that I could tell. One, within a period of, let's say an equinox back to that same equinox, a full year cycle, there was about 12 rotations of the moon around the earth. So you have kind of a natural division of 12. Also, they noticed that there seemed to be a division of about 4 seasons. There was the spring where things started to grow, summer where things really flourished and kind of got hot and died, the fall where things, mulched back down and re-decomposed into the earth, and then the winter where things froze and everything, So you have these 4 levels of noticeable change that cycled throughout the year. And 10 months doesn't really divide by 4. Because they noticed we had 4 seasons, they added a couple months. They could divide 12 by 4, turn it into 3 months per season. And then we also have that where each month approximately lines up with the cycle of the moon. Now, what about the clock being divided into 12, or 12 hours in the day, 24 hours in the day? This actually originally came from the Egyptians. As far as I could see, the Egyptians divided the day and night into 2 separate sections of 12 hours. And at nighttime, they would count 12 stars. I'm not sure how that worked. I'm not an astronomer, but they would count 12 stars. And the interesting thing is that the Egyptians did it, actually, I think, in a really cool way. So a day was 12 hours. Like daylight was 12 hours. So in the winter, sunrise to sunset was 12 hours, and each hour was quite short, I guess you could say. And in the summertime, sunrise to sunset, you have 12 hours. So the each daytime hour is quite long. So your hours would change from, I mean, theoretically day to day, but like season to season, your hour during the day would change. Your working hour would change in length. And of course, a Greek came along and ruined it and decided to segment it into equal sections. I'm sure it was much better for cartographers and sailors to have a regimented, segmented 12-hour period, but it's a little boring in a way. Like it makes more sense. It's easier to write about, and it's uniform everywhere in the world, but it's just not as fun. Because if you had an hour, if you had daylight to day to, or if you had sunrise to sunset as a 12-hour period, and your day was divided into those 12 hours, and each hour was a certain length depending on your sunrise to sunset, then you would have a gradient of 12-hour periods throughout the year, and also throughout the world, because the top of the world and the bottom of the world might not get as long of days or longer days. Like, for example, Northern Canada in the summertime gets 24-hour daylight, and so they would have a 12-hour day in the summertime, like, period. So each hour would be 2 hours for them in the summertime, if you know what I'm saying. Whereas in the wintertime in the Northern Hemisphere, zero daylight for I think a month or two, and so they would have 12 hours of night, but 0 hours of day. And so you'd have this gradient of hours growing across the world as you went down it. Anyways, I think it'd be really cool, but I digress. Now, what about this panther I mentioned before? Well, the Panthera uncia is the snow leopard. It has gone by two other names, as far as I can tell. Leo Uncia, which is the once panther, and Uncia, which is the once, or yeah. So Panthera uncia, the once panther, Leo Uncia, the once lion, and Uncia, once. Now, I mentioned earlier that Uncia was Latin for 1/12, and so ounce and inch both derive from that. Now, what I was wondering is, how does 1/12 relate to the snow leopard? Well, it could be that they only come out once a year, 1/12. Perhaps they only breed 1 month a year. Perhaps people only see them one time in a year. They are quite reclusive. But what I ended up finding out is Uncia for the panther actually comes from the French. I don't know if this is still used. I don't know French, but from what I saw, Uncia comes from the French for once, not 1/12. So once upon a time, something you see a single time, something that happens a single time, once. And this also relates to the word one. So this ties into two ideas. The idea that snow leopards are reclusive, so you'd likely only see them once or once in a while. And the idea that snow leopards are loners, so you'd likely only see one at a time. You'd never see a pair of snow leopards. So taking this idea together, Uncia from the French, once, and one, kind of culminates into this idea of a reclusive, loner type snow leopard that lives in the mountains and is hard to find, hard to see, very interesting in how difficult it is to track down. And so that's kind of it. The name is very, especially Uncia, once, really brings to mind the idea that this thing is hard to find. So I thought that was really cool. And a lot of this knowledge is not just coming from this search. Disney and National Geographic had or have documentaries on YouTube about the snow leopard that you have to go check out. Okay, so I'm gonna try and do some like board game videos. I think that would be a lot of fun. So let me know if you guys like board games. Okay, bye.